DND number 7, Warriors in Jesus' Name, Chapter 15. Everyone was gone. Breeze and Logan were at Breeze's house. Bella had been taken to the hospital for treatment, and Justin thought it would be better if he and his wife Lori were the ones to accompany her. Jason was back at his office gathering every bit of documentation he had on the Landau/Sheridan case, since he would have to present it the next morning to the chief of police, with whom he had a reasonably amiable relationship. Mark walked alone through the house, envisioning the story Bella had told. He could see it unfolding exactly as she said. The door to the bedroom she'd been using broken in, the room in shambles as Gordon fought with her to get her out and down the hall. Gordon's room torn apart, broken glass on the dresser and floor, blood everywhere. He found the bullet hole in the bathroom door frame, the first shot, the one she'd missed. The bullet had been removed and bagged. The bed had been stripped. DNA evidence would be found, evidence of her story of what happened the previous night. It was too difficult to think of Bella, such a gentle soul, facing and enduring that kind of abuse. All he'd wanted to do since he arrived there earlier was to pull her into his arms and comfort her, hold her, tell her everything was going to be okay now. Gordon was gone, and they had their whole lives in front of them. And even though Jason and Justin felt sure the police would jump at the chance of arresting and prosecuting a member of the Ricky Keno, Brianna Adams family, they also felt just as sure that they had enough evidence to ensure it wouldn't come to that. Sighing, he sat down on the top step. He felt drained, almost too tired to think. There had only been a few times in his life that he'd felt that way, and those times he'd done two things, the same two things he was about to do: talk it out with God and talk it out with his brother. Rising, he got in his car, drove to the hospital, and headed for Joey's room. The light was off when Mark eased the door open. He stood at the end of Joey's bed, thinking he shouldn't bother him. He should just go get Jojo from his mom's house and go home. He started to do just that when Joey stirred and stretched and spoke. "Mark?" "Yeah, hey. Didn't mean to wake you. Go back to sleep." "Don't go. I'm awake now." Mark shrugged and nodded. "Okay." He pulled a chair up close to the bed. "So I've been on the phone half the night trying to get some details." "And did you get them?" Mark asked. "Only that Bella shot Gordon in self-defense. He beat her up pretty bad. She's at the county medical center, and for some weird reason, she's with Justin instead of you or Breeze." Mark shook his head and heaved a heavy sigh. "Yeah, well, Breeze is taking care of Logan right now, so that's why she isn't with her. I'm not with her because they thought it would be best that Bella and I keep things cool." Joey's brain began to compute. It took him only a minute before he looked up at Mark. "Conspiracy?" Mark nodded. "To commit murder." "They're charging you?" "No, but Jason and Justin think it's entirely possible they could try to turn it that way." Joey blew out a breath. "You've known each other a few years. You're interested in each other. Just need to get the jealous, controlling husband out of the way. What's the best way to do that? Instigate a fight and blow him away in self-defense." "I can hear the cell doors closing as we speak," Mark said. "Well, then again, I have recorded conversations. Bella telling Breeze about the abuse. Breeze presenting Bella with the gun. Logan telling you about abuse. Nowhere in there does Bella mention you. We do have you and me and Breeze over at the house cleaning when Gordon is out of town." "Well, I think I had the foresight then to realize we were being recorded. I don't think anything telling was said, just a casual conversation between friends." You got her to leave with you and have dinner at your house." "Yeah. Yes, I did. But if you listen to the conversation, I think you can tell that it was the first time she'd ever done anything like that. So that would throw out the part about planning this for 2 years." Joey nodded. "If Jason volunteers the surveillance tapes, he'll have to volunteer them all. I hope he listens very carefully to them to make sure nothing is incriminating." "That's what he's doing right now," Mark said. They sat quietly as their minds went over the consequences of the worst-case scenario. Are you afraid? Joey finally asked. Not really. I mean, I could let myself get all worked up about it. If I go down, that means Bella goes down too, and think what that would do to Logan. And if I go down, I can't even imagine what that would mean to Jojo. First, never knowing his mother and then losing me. It's a freaking scary thought, but I just don't see that there's any proof of anything. They can speculate all they want, but they can't prove it. Well, people have been tried and convicted on pure outrage with no proof whatsoever. Mark nodded. Are you saying you think they might go through with this? I don't know, Mark. I do know that you're my brother, and it would kill me if anything like that happened to you, because it wouldn't just happen to you, it would happen to all of us. Mom, Jojo, Bree, Jeffy, Ricky, Eric, Dad, Eric and Taylor. We'd have to hide you away somewhere. Mark smiled. You'd do that for me, huh? Sure. New identity, new town. We can't let you do time, not when you're innocent. Well, maybe not so innocent, Mark said. I mean, I wanted him dead. Every time I heard he'd hit Bella again and what he did to her last night, he stopped and shook his head. He deserved to die. What did he do last night? Rape and sodomy over and over throughout the night. Joey sadly shook his head. Silence again as they imagined what Bella had endured. Mark's thoughts turned to his brother. All this aside, how are you feeling? Good, lucky, grateful. They should be letting me out of here soon. I heard it would be 2 or 3 more days. Joey frowned. Yeah. And then Jason has me all lined up to complete my week in the accounting department, and then on to human resources, and then on to the geek squad, computers and technical equipment, which should actually be fairly interesting. Mark smiled. You'll get through. Just remember to keep that grateful attitude. Things could be much worse. I'll just be happy when we know you and Bella are clear and free to actually have a life. Me too. I feel responsible, you know. You? Why? I neglected to get that gun back. I kept meaning to, but it seemed there just wasn't any time. Of course, there was. I just didn't make the time. He shook his head. Well, if only this and if only that. You know that's not healthy, Joe. Yeah, whatever. If you had removed the gun, maybe Bella would be dead right now. I mean, she had bruises around her neck. He tried to strangle her. He totally lost control. That much was obvious. She really did need the gun for self-defense. Well, then, I guess I'm glad it was there. Mark smiled. Yeah, so forget all that other crap because it's not all about you, Joey. Joey grinned. Mark turned as the door opened and Jeffy walked in. Hi, Mark. I didn't expect to see you here. It's late. He bent down and kissed her cheek. Yeah, just having a powwow with Joey. Well, I'm about to start my shift, but I wanted to check on Joey first. See, Mark, it is all about me. Jeffy moved to Joey's bedside and lowered the rail and looked him over, checked both wounds, nodded in satisfaction. She looked into his eyes and took his hand, then frowned. You're upset. You're not supposed to be doing that, Jeffy, he complained. I wasn't even trying. I think I'm getting much better at it. I think I can look without draining myself. Well, look somewhere else, please. Why are you upset? Because of what Bella had to do? That's part of it. What else? Joey nodded toward Mark. Ask him. She turned to Mark. Well, it's probably not going to happen, but it seems they're looking at Bella and I for murder and accessory to murder. He expected Jeffy to be upset and indignant. She wasn't. She merely smiled. Let me take your hand. He rolled his eyes, but held out his hand. Her body jerked for a second, and he tried to pull away, but she held tight. She calmed, closed her eyes, and finally she looked up at Mark's face. You love her very much. He blew out a breath. Yes, I do. Well, there's no peril for you two. You won't be charged with anything. At least I think you won't. No peril, huh? Mark said with a smile. Well, good. I'm glad all that something bad is going to happen to you stuff is over. Oh, it's not over. You are in danger. You. I can't see it clearly, but I know you're at risk. Jeffy, Don't question me, Mark. I know Joey was in danger. I knew Joey was in danger, didn't I? I was right, and believe me, I didn't want to be. I even knew when Bella had been hurt. Yes, you did, but what about Kimmy? You've been saying she's in danger of drowning for years now, but she's never had anything happen to her. I don't know what that's all about. I just know what I saw, and I have seen again in dreams. It's coming, and you don't know how hard it is to know that. I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. Good. Then don't. You're in danger. Be careful. He smiled. Yes, ma'am, I promise. She smiled back. Thank you. Now, as I was saying, you and Bella are not going to be charged, so stop being sad or worried. She turned back to Joey. And you're going to be fine, too. Awesome to know that, he said quickly. Well, I have to go. She turned and pointed at Mark. You don't keep Joey up all night. He needs his rest, and you need to rest too. You're totally drained. He nodded. Yes, I am. She leaned down and kissed Joey, hugged and kissed Mark, and started out, but turned just before she left. Oh, and aren't you just too excited about fighting in the Keno Challenge? I know I am. She giggled and waved her fingers. Bye. Mark watched her go. She was such an anomaly, going from stern doctor giving orders to little sister, excited like a kid on Christmas morning. And beautiful. So very beautiful. He realized he thought of her as an angel. Who knows? Maybe that's exactly what she was. An earth angel. She certainly wasn't a normal human being. Well, Mark said, offering his hand to Joey, oddly, I feel better having talked with you and having been reassured by our little sister. Oddly, I do too, Joey said with his goofy grin in place. I am tired and I have to be at Judge Hovan's chambers early in the morning. Yeah, I guess you need to take care of that loose end. Right? I don't want anyone trying to keep Logan away from Bella for any reason, and Judge Latham needs to take responsibility for his actions. Really, Joey said with a sigh. Who knows what may or may not have happened had Gordon not gotten custody and convinced Bella to move back in. Who knows? Mark agreed with a weary sigh. Get some rest, bro. You have to start training soon. Mark nodded. I have to warn you, my heart is not in it. It will be. Now go. Mark drove home, his mind in a million places. Making sure Judge Hovan gives custody to Bella tomorrow. He had court Monday morning for 2 clients, and he had work to do on those cases. How was he going to be able to squeeze in training for the challenge? He'd better figure it out, or he's going to get his butt kicked. He hoped Jojo wasn't feeling too uprooted having to stay at his grandparents' house, but he doubted that since they'd raised him for the first few years of his life. And then his mind settled on Bella and what she was going through at this moment. She was in physical pain, obviously. Emotionally, she had to be a mess. She'd taken a man's life. And just seeing Gordon's covered body had affected him deeply. How must she feel knowing she'd pulled the trigger? Was she relieved? Was she remorseful? Did she know they could be looking at her for murder? And was she afraid? Mark shook his head to clear it when he realized he'd turned the car around and was now heading toward Breeze's house. He shouldn't go, he knew. Wait until Jason had the situation in hand, but he had to see her, had to let her know she wasn't alone. Before he knew it, he was pulling up the large circular drive. He parked in front and headed up the steps. Lights were on, and Mark figured Breeze was awake. He knocked softly, and Breeze opened the door and smiled. There you are. I just finished telling Bella that I was sure you would get here when you could. Mark smiled sheepishly. I probably shouldn't be here at all. She pulled him in. Yes, you should. Joey's in the hospital, and I need someone here. Logan was sick and cried himself to sleep, and Mr. Lee dropped Bella off about 30 minutes ago, and she's all weepy, and all she talks about is you. She says you seemed so distant. She thinks you think less of her because she shot Gordon. Mark shook his head. Breeze pointed toward the west wing. She's back in the den. Go to her. Mark didn't hesitate. He found her curled up on the sofa, a velvet throw wrapped around her shoulders. She sat up when he entered the room. Mark? He smiled and came to her and sat down on the sofa and pulled her into his lap. Yes, Bella. I'm here now, baby. Everything is going to be okay. She buried her face against his chest. Are you ashamed of me? For what? For doing what it took to save your own life? I'm grateful to you. And I'm grateful to Breeze that the gun was there. Otherwise, I believe you'd be dead. And I couldn't handle that. He held her close while she cried. He didn't try to quiet her. He let her get it all out. When she quieted, she looked up at him, and he had a chance to look closely at her injuries. Her face was swollen again, especially her lip. She had a black eye. He pulled the blanket away to examine the bruises on her throat, even pulled the t-shirt she now wore away from her body so he could see if he really had seen claw marks on her chest. He had. What did the doctors at the hospital have to say? She shrugged. They said, I have a concussion. They did a rape kit. They took lots of pictures. My whole body is one big bruise. He ran a hand over her silky black hair. It was down for a change, hanging loose around her shoulders, covering her face whenever she bent her head. She looked up at him. Justin and Lori were so nice to me. He smiled. Of course they were. Lori is a nurse. I know. She's a sweetheart. Our whole family was very happy when she and Justin married. Bree nodded. I really like your family. They really like you. Logan is having a hard time. And that doesn't surprise me. I think you and him both should speak to Eric. He's a psychologist. Not practicing, but still, you should speak to him. He can recommend a counselor or therapist for you and Logan to go to. It can help. And what you've been through lately and what you've been through over the years, it's been quite a trauma. You're going to need to sort out feelings and emotions. She looked up at him and nodded. Her big blue eyes seemed to blink in slow motion. Mark? He touched her cheek gently with his finger. Yes? Do you still love me? Oh, baby, he said, as he pulled her close and wrapped his arms gently around her. Of course I do. That's why I'm here. I couldn't stand being away from you. I had to see you. I love you, Bella, so much. I love you, and I want you and Logan to be part of my life, and I don't want to hurry you in any way. But I dream of the day that we're a family, you and me and Jojo and Logan. Well, that's like a fantasy I have, she said. Well, it will be a reality one day, but first things first. There's a lot of business to take care of. Like what? Or for example, does Gordon have family? Yes, he has a sister back east. His father's dead. His mother is alive, but they haven't spoken in years. Gordon hates her, he did. His family needs to be notified of his death. And I'm not sure, but I don't think it's appropriate for you to make his funeral arrangements, considering the circumstances. Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought about funeral arrangements. So we need to see if he had an attorney, a will, a trustee, all those types of things. We need to take care of getting someone to make his arrangements. We need to see about yours and Logan's belongings that you might want to keep from the house. Whose name is the house in? It's in both of ours. My father helped Gordon and I to get the house. Mark nodded. I realize you won't want to live there after what's happened, but the house will have to be sold. Any outstanding debts will have to be paid. There's a lot of red tape that will have to be waded through, but don't worry, he said when he saw her frowning. Gordon's attorney and I, or Justin, will work through it. Why Justin? Why not you? He sighed. Well, sweetie, right now, the police are on the verge of thinking that you and I planned Gordon's demise. What? How could they think that? Don't be upset. It's just a formality, I think. Covering all the bases. We have video and audio of what was talked about in that home for weeks, and all of it will point to our innocence. Oh, no. What will happen to Logan and Jojo? They're going to live with us. Happily ever after, that's what. Maybe I shouldn't have told you. Of course you should have. I'm a real person, Mark, with the right to be privy to my own circumstances. Gordon treated me like I didn't have a brain in my head. Please, don't you start. Never. I was simply thinking of protecting you from the worry of the situation. But I promise you now, you and me will be equal partners in all things. Always. I promise I'll never keep any secrets from you. Bella's heart began to beat harder. Secrets? Suddenly she realized that she wasn't sure she could promise the same, because she had a secret, a big one. However, she was bound and determined that nobody will ever, ever know her secret. She smiled up at him. It wasn't fair. She knew that, but it was what it was, and there was no help for it. Thank you, Mark, she said. We'll get through this, Bella, and we'll be a family. I can't wait, she whispered. It feels so good to be here with you, with your arms around me, so warm and secure. I think I could drift right off to sleep. Then sleep, sweetheart. I'll be right here. New scene. I can't bear it, Shelley said softly as she cried against her husband's chest. Eric stroked her back. Don't borrow trouble, my love. They haven't been charged with anything. They're just being looked at. Justin and Jason are on top of things. Have you ever known them to let us down? She sniffed. No. Okay, then. Let's just wait and see what happens. How long? How long will we have to wait to know if they intend to charge my baby with accessory to murder? Probably only a few days. Well, just the thought of seeing him in handcuffs or behind bars. Oh, Eric. Okay now, Shelley girl. You know that your thoughts are powerful things. Instead of visualizing the worst possible outcome, why don't you visualize the best possible outcome? And that would be a much better use of your time and energy. Positive thoughts, sweetheart. You know that. Shelley nodded. Yes, I know. I'm not sure why it suddenly seems so difficult. Eric scooted farther down in the bed and pulled her close. Maybe because your youngest son is in the hospital recovering from an attempted murder. You've just barely made it past that trauma, and now your oldest son is in jeopardy. She ran her hand over his chest, and even at age 61 was ripped with muscle. I'm not the one being traumatized. My sons are. Well, for a parent, your children's traumas are your own. It's extremely hard to separate them. That's what family is all about. Yes, she agreed with a frown. It is hard to separate it. On the other hand, each person is responsible for their own actions, for their own lives, and for their own happiness, Eric continued. You, right now, are responsible for how you handle your life's traumas. So, do you focus on the negative or on the positive? The positive, of course, Shelley said. Good. He kissed her softly on the mouth. We'll get through this, sweetheart. I just know it. Well, that's good to hear from you. Whenever you say it, I believe it. New scene. Mark made his way downstairs in the gray light of dawn. He and Bella had slept on the sofa in Breeze's den. In truth, she'd slept, and he'd drifted in and out. Just before sunup, he carried her up to bed and tucked her in, promising to keep her informed of the day's happenings, and extracting a promise from her that she would rest and heal. He intended to sneak out, hurry home, shower, and change his rumpled clothing before seeing Judge Hovan. But Logan was already up, eating cereal in the kitchen. Hey there, Mark said, coming forward and placing a hand on Logan's head. How you doing? Logan nodded. I'm okay. He looked around anxiously. How's Mom? Mark smiled. She's okay, too. Logan looked down and spooned up another heap of Cheerios and stuffed his mouth and eyed Master Mark. Do you have questions? Mark asked. Logan shrugged. 'Cause I know I'd have questions if I were you. Logan kept his eyes down. There will be a funeral, and Logan's head jerked up. Do I have to go? Mark eyed the young man. His eyes were wide with what seemed like fear. No, Logan, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. He calmed. I don't think I want to go. I'll talk to your mom about that if you'd like me to. When Logan didn't answer, Mark studied him, trying to figure out his state of mind. I guess you feel pretty upset about what happened? Logan shrugged again. I guess. Do you want to talk about it? Logan shook his head. I don't think so. Okay, well, if you change your mind, you know you can talk to me about anything. Anything at all. Logan didn't look up, but the loud sniff gave him away. Hey, son, Mark said softly. It's okay. Everything is going to work out. I know you feel pretty bad right now. I mean, he was still your father, and Logan rose abruptly. And I hate him. And I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad. He turned and ran right into Breeze as she entered the kitchen. Hey, sweetie. It's okay. Shh, now, she said, hugging him hard. It's okay. You know what? I feel the exact same way. It's not bad to feel that way. He hurt your mom, and he had no intentions of stopping. So yeah, I'm glad he's dead too. She looked up at Mark. I know you have to get to the courthouse. Go ahead. Me and Logan will be fine. We'll have a long talk. Mark nodded. Okay. He came forward, bent and placed a kiss on Breeze's head. Joey has good taste, he said. Bree smiled up at him. So do you, she said. Mark looked down at Logan, who turned to look up at him. I'm proud of you, Logan. You have a fierce love for your mom, and you have the protective instincts of a man. He held out his hand. I'd be honored to shake your hand. Logan blinked up at him. Slowly, he placed his hand in Mark's. Mark shook his hand and nodded. Look after the girls while I'm gone, okay? Logan nodded and gave a tentative smile. Yes, sir. New scene. Smiling, Mark stepped out of the courthouse and tilted his face up to the sun and drew a deep breath. He'd almost been late, but almost doesn't count. Judge Hovan acted quickly. He remanded custody to Bella Landau and turned the complaints against Judge Latham over to the chief judge for proper disciplinary action. With that one small weight off his shoulders, Mark immediately felt like he had a little breathing room. He pulled out his phone and noted that Joey had called and pushed the buttons to call Bella. Hello, she said sleepily. Did I wake you? Yes. Good. I mean, at least good you were actually sleeping. How did it go? Great. She let out a breath she'd been holding. Up to now, nothing had gone her way. Tears gathered in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. I have custody? Yes. Thank you, she whispered. My absolute pleasure. Now rest. I'll come by to see you this evening if that's okay with you and Logan. Oh, it's more than okay. The moment he ended the conversation, he called Joey. You okay? Mark asked the moment Joey answered. If you're asking about my health, I'm just fine. What's wrong? How do you know something's wrong? I'm just getting a vibe. Maybe being psychic runs in the family. Maybe. What's wrong? A Detective Mooney and Detective Ramos came to visit me this morning bright and early. What did they ask? Well, what we expected. What was your relationship with Bella Landau? How long have you known her? What was my relationship to the family? How did I end up being the one to pull Gordon off Bella a few weeks ago? Well, they damn well know how all that went down. Right, but they wanted to hear if I give the same story twice. Look, so I was thinking, they came to me first thing this morning. They're probably going to be speaking with the rest of the family soon, and well, you know, we didn't exactly have a conversation with the family about this. I mean, we all need to stick to the same story. Well, I don't want anyone to have to lie. They all know how I know Bella. They all know that I realized she was being abused and that you had been hired to investigate and protect. And they all know that you have feelings for her. Yes, and I'm not going to lie about that. I'm going to be completely truthful because I have nothing to hide. You're going to tell them that you and Bella spent a night together? If it comes up as a direct question, I guess I'll have to. Oh, it's going to be one of the first questions they ask. Well, then so be it. Justin says they're going to find out one way or the other, and if I try to hide it, it will be incriminating. So I'll just have to trust him. Okay, well, still, I think I'm going to make some calls and make sure we're all on the same page. If you feel you need to, you go ahead. I think I'll start with Breeze. I just got off the phone with her. I'll call her back and tell her to make sure she and Bella stick to the truth and don't try to hide anything, not even yours and Bella's feelings for each other. If you hear anything from Jason, let me know, Mark said. Will do. He didn't get the cell phone in his pocket before it rang again. Hey, Rick. What's up? They want me to come in for questioning, me and Bree, and even Eric and Taylor. Mark sighed. Sorry about this, Rick. Forget sorry. Look, bro, I got this rep, you know? You mean the Ricky Keno never lies thing? Yeah, that. I don't see the problem, Mark asked. Mark said, no, you don't get what I'm going to ask. You just say the word. You tell me what needs to be said and I'll say it. I think it will hold a lot of weight coming from me. Ricky, look, I can't tell you how touched I am that you would destroy your reputation for my sake, but it would be a wasted gesture. The truth is going to come out. I'm in love with Bella, and they're going to know it. She stayed the night at my home, and they're going to know that. If you tell them otherwise, no one will ever trust you again. No, keep up the good rep. You know, I'll do anything for you. Apparently, Mark said. Well then, what I am going to start on today is a little PR work. How? Mark asked. Just by taking a walk down the strip. Okay, well, I trust you. Chin up, bro. We got your back. Thanks, Ricky. I never doubted that. Hold on. Bree wants to talk to you. Okay. Mark, Bree said. Hey, sis. Don't you worry, okay? Okay, he said dryly. I talked to Jeffy a few minutes ago, and they caught her coming out of the hospital at the end of her shift this morning. They took her down to the precinct and questioned her. Mark sighed heavily. Man, I hate that. Makes me sick, them coming after my kid sister without warning. Is she okay? Bree laughed. Oh, she had warning, if you catch my drift. She has her own special alarm system. She said it was them that never knew what hit them. She said she answered all their silly little questions, and then she lit into them, giving them statistics and law of averages on each question and telling them how much of the taxpayers' money they were wasting. Literally, she gave them a precise dollar amount. She gave them theorems and mathematical probabilities on your actions and Bella's actions, and let them know that their actions were, I think the word she used was brainless. She seemed quite amused by the whole thing and told me not to worry. She said they were only going through the motions. They already knew there's no proof that you and Bella planned Gordon's death. Well then, I guess I shouldn't be worried at all, Mark said. Bree laughed. I guess not. She certainly put my mind at ease. Too bad I didn't hear from her 30 minutes ago. Why? What happened 30 minutes ago? They called Eric and Mom and asked them to come in. Man, they didn't waste any time this morning, did they? No, and I hate having to take my kids down there, but I'll insist on being present. I'm sorry, Bree. Don't you apologize, Mark. You didn't cause this. You didn't make Gordon Landau beat his wife. That had been going on for a long time. Yeah, but I complicated matters. I knew better than to, well, you know. Yes, I know. I mean, I really knew better. Last time I acted without thinking, I ended up being presented with a kid at the age of 18. So you see, something good came out of it. Instead of calling it acting without thinking, let's call it acting instinctively. Mark gave a soft chuckle. Okay, we'll call it that. It is true, JoJo is the best thing that ever happened to me, but you know what I'm saying. Listen, Mark, you deserve some happiness in your life, so you jumped the gun a little. It's all going to work out. Just wait and see. I have no choice but to do just that. Thanks, Bree. Bye, sweetie. I'll let you know how it goes. Mark ended the call and got to his car, opened the door, and sat down when his phone went off again. He pushed a button. I'll call you right back. Tossing the phone on the passenger seat, he buckled his seatbelt, started the car, and pulled out of the parking garage. Call Justin, he said. Justin picked up a second later. They want you at the station, you and JoJo. Blowing out a breath, he tried to concentrate. When? 11. I have to go get JoJo from school. I told them that. Are you coming? Of course. They've already hit up the entire family. Yes, I just spoke to Eric. Do you know if they've called Bella in? They're giving her time to rest, and they said they will talk to her and Logan at 3 this afternoon. What about Breeze? She's at 1. Have you heard from Jason? He's getting all his ducks in a row. He intends to present what he has to them no later than 5 today. Okay then, so here we go. Yes, here we go. Keep your chin up. Will do. New scene. And did you understand the situation going on in the Landau house? Jojo nodded his head. Yes, sir. Tell me the situation. Mr. Landau was abusing Miss Bella. What do you mean by abusing? He hit her. How do you know? Did you see him hit her? No, sir. I only know because of, evidence. Mark smiled. The detective frowned. And what evidence would that be? Well, she had bruises on her arms. She always acted afraid of him, like she was afraid to ask him if she could go to the belt party. How did you know she was afraid? I'm a kid, but I'm not stupid. I can tell, just like you could tell if I was afraid to tell you something. And are you afraid? Not even a little. The detective's eyes met Mark's, and Mark couldn't contain his pride. Whether or not Bella was being abused by her husband is not in question here, Justin said. Detective Mooney nodded. He'd merely been trying to assess the kid. His assessment was that little Joseph Adams was like every other member of the Keno Adams family. Confident, somewhat arrogant, and on the side of right. He moved on. Do you like Mrs. Landau? Yes, sir. Do you think your father likes her too? Yes, sir. You've already spoken to Mr. Adams about his relationship with Mrs. Landau. He doesn't deny it. I'm going to allow you to go ahead with this line of questioning because they have nothing to hide. Still, remember, he is just a kid, Justin said. Jojo slanted his eyes up at his Uncle Justin, and Justin raised his brows right back at him. Joseph, how long has your father and Mrs. Landau been having a relationship? My dad has known Miss Bella since they came to the same studio where my dad teaches martial arts. So the relationship has been going on for 2 years. He's known her for 2 years. I know you're talking about sex. You want to know if they've been having sex or like going out. The answer is no. My dad really likes Miss Bella. I think he's in love with her. I hope he's in love with her, but that just started. What do you mean, just? Well, just the last few weeks. And why now? I don't know. The detective looked toward Mark. A few weeks ago, I noticed bruises on Bella's arms. That's when I realized for sure what was happening. Then Joey got assigned to protect her and definitely confirmed the abuse, Mark began. Does he usually talk to you about his assignments? No. There is a confidence to be kept, but it's not like an attorney-client privilege. He's allowed some tactical maneuvering in order to accomplish his purpose. And why did he need you to accomplish his purpose? He knew that I knew her, and he asked me to talk to her about removing herself from the situation. As Joey put it, it's hard to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. So I agreed to help, and when I talked to her, I began to realize that I had feelings for her. Who wouldn't? She's sweet and kind and beautiful, and yes, knowing what kind of abuse she was taking at home brought out the protective instincts in me. The detective turned back to Jojo. And you knew your father had feelings for Miss Landau? Yes, sir. Did you ever see them doing things like holding hands and kissing? Yes, sir. Not this last weekend, but the one before. The one that we've already talked about, the one when you went biking and Miss Landau spent the night with your father. Yes, sir. I thought you spent the night with your uncle. Jojo blew out an exasperated breath. I did. But I came home the next day, and me and Logan were out back on the tramp, and we saw my dad kiss Miss Bella. It was the first time. Look, I know you're trying to make it look like my dad and Miss Bella planned to kill Mr. Landau, but you can't because we're all telling the truth. You can't keep going back over and over stuff because my story won't change. Did your dad coach you? Did he tell you how to answer my questions? Mark only rolled his eyes. Jojo sat up straight. Yes, he did. The detective sat up straight. What did he say? He told me to tell the truth exactly as I know it. He told me to not try to say or do anything to protect anyone. He said as long as I told the truth, everything would work out the way it was supposed to work out. Detective Mooney's eyes met Mark's and then Justin's. Both men were trying to control their smiles. Mooney had to give it to them. The kid was smart, mature, and honest, straightforward, and brave. He had to admit he was impressed with the entire family. He'd already been told by his captain that he wouldn't find anything out of place when it came to the Keno family. They were pillars of the community, of the nation, and even of the world. Still, Mooney felt he owed it to the rest of the regular old common people out there to treat the Kenos like anyone else and cover all the bases. He'd elected to do just that as quickly as possible in order to close the case. His interview with the famous Ricky Keno and his equally famous wife, Brianna Adams, and their 2 kids had been just as informative and entertaining as this one, maybe more so. He'd been impressed that even though they came across as extremely confident, they didn't look down their noses at him or expect any special treatment. They'd been polite, forthcoming, and honest. The kids, like young Joseph here, had not been afraid to voice their opinions and yet did so in a respectful way. Whatever formula the family was using to raise kids should be bottled and sold. His interview with Dr. Juneflower Keno had also been informative. He smiled as he remembered her indignation at him, even considering that her brother's intentions were less than honorable. She'd lit into him and really given him what for. There was no way he could compete with her dazzling intellect, and the interview had been short and sweet. Well, not so sweet. Detective Mooney nodded at young Joseph. Your dad is absolutely right. The truth is always the best. I guess that's all the questions I have for now. He stood and offered his hand. Oh, one more thing, Logan. You and he are friends? Yes, sir. Is that all? Jojo's eyes darted to his father. He drew a deep breath. Well, we're like brothers. How are you like brothers? We took a blood oath. Like blood brother type thing? Yes, sir. Joe lifted his hand and turned it palm up. The detective studied the scar. It was pink and obviously fairly new. Would you like Logan to be your real brother? Logan and me, we both want my dad and his mom to get married, and then we would be real brothers. And isn't it convenient that Mr. Landau is out of the picture? You're going a little too far, Justin warned before Mark could say anything. Yes, I agree. That was uncalled for, he admitted. Jojo decided he would answer anyway. I'm glad he's gone. I'm sorry that he's dead, but I'm glad he's gone. Me and Logan were hoping that they would get a divorce, and Logan told me Miss Bella was going to get a divorce, but Mr. Landau beat her up and tried to kill her. She didn't want to kill him, I know, because she's too nice, but she was probably scared and just fired the gun. But I know Miss Bella wishes she could have just got divorced. 'Cause now she has to remember what it was like to kill someone, and that takes a long time to get over. And just how do you know that? My grandfather had to kill someone once. He says it took him a long time to get over it. He had to do it because if he didn't, the man was going to kill my grandmother. So he says it was worth it. But he says life is precious, even animals and bugs and even bad guys. Mooney knew the story, of course. He nodded. I'll try to remember that. Thank you for coming in. He offered his hand. Mark nodded and shook his hand. Justin and Jojo followed suit, and they turned and left quickly. Mooney walked out and met with his partner and his captain who'd been listening to the interview. Hell of a family, the captain said, to say the least. I just heard that Mark Adams is going to take his brother's place in the Keno Challenge, his partner said. I guess I'll have to get tickets. New scene. I don't want to go, Logan said quietly. Please don't make me go. Bella took his hand in hers. Logan, look at me. He raised his head and looked at his mom. I know this is a hard thing, but I've never known you to shy away from something just because it's hard. Remember, I know you. I know how strong you are. I know more than anyone how strong you can be, and I need you to be strong for me one more time. But what should I say? You should tell them just the same thing you said to the detective earlier. It's okay. They've already spoken with Mark and his whole family. The police already know what kind of man your father was, she said, her voice cracking at the past tense. Just tell them your story. They'll probably ask you questions about things your father did in the past. It's okay to tell them. And they'll probably ask you about my relationship with Mark. It's okay to tell them. Is that all? Is that all they'll ask? Bella thought hard. Well, they'll probably ask where you were last night, and that would be the easiest one to answer. You were at flag football practice. Yeah, but what if they ask me something that I don't know the answer to? Then just tell them that you don't know. What if they ask me if I'm glad he's dead? Because I am. That's okay, Logan. I know how you feel. There's been such a weight hanging over your head for so long. Of course you feel relieved to have that weight suddenly gone. I realize the way your father treated me and the way he treated you is all you've ever known. No, Mom, it's not all I've ever known. I'm not stupid. I see how other fathers are. I see how Master Mark is with Jojo, and how Mr. Keno is with Eric and Taylor. I see how other men treat their wives. My dad wasn't normal. I know that. He's a freak. He was a freak. Bella sighed, trying hard to understand Logan's mood and to understand his frame of mind. He was troubled. That much was obvious. She decided right then and there that when they got home later today, she would give Grandmaster Keno a call and ask him to speak to Logan. She was thinking she better do all she could for Logan now, because she might be spending the rest of her time in jail, and if they drug her off to jail, who knows what Logan would do. As if he could read her mind, Logan placed his hand on her shoulder. I just want you to know, Mom, that I won't let them put you in jail. Bella frowned. Nonsense, Logan. No one is going to jail. And that is the end of chapter 15.